There were 9 names in the book behind the fire extinguisher, not the official logbook, a different one, duct taped to the mounting bracket, written in 9 different hands. I found it on day 14. I wish I'd found it on day 1, because the one thing every entry agreed on was the number 31. 31 days. That's the window. And by the time I found the book, I'd already used almost half of mine. My name is Kevin Malloy. I was a seasonal fire lookout for the Deschutes National Forest, assigned to the Burnt Ridge Tower in the central Oregon Cascades. And the person who recommended me for the job knew exactly what was going to happen on day 31, because he'd watched it happen 5 times before. I need to go in order. The order is the only thing I have left that still makes sense. Orrin Pace got me the job. I need to say that up front so you understand what it means later. Orrin and I had been close since college, not in a way I'd normally explain to strangers. But I think it matters here. When my marriage came apart last October, he was the one who showed up. Drove 3 hours on a Wednesday, sat on my kitchen floor with me, didn't try to fix anything. Just stayed. People say, I owe him everything as a figure of speech. I mean it structurally. He was the load-bearing wall of the worst year of my life. So when he called in February about a lookout, posting good pay, quiet work, a place to think of, I said yes, because he asked. I'd have said yes to almost anything Orrin suggested that winter, and I think, looking back, he knew that. He drove me up on May 16th. The Burnt Ridge Tower sits at 5,800 feet on a rocky spine above a drainage that feeds the upper Deschutes. 14 by 14 cab on a 40-foot steel frame. Panoramic windows, a cot, a propane stove, a fire finder bolted to a pedestal in the center, and a radio that connected to dispatch in Bend and to Orrin's tower at Rimrock, 4 miles northwest. He'd been doing summers out here for 3 years. We'd be able to talk every day. That was the selling point. Not the solitude. The proximity to the one person I still felt normal around. We spent 2 days going through the system's fire finder, radio protocols, weather instruments. Orrin was patient and thorough, and it felt good. It felt like the version of my life where things were getting better. On the second evening, we sat on the catwalk watching the light drain off the ridge, and he told me the rule. He didn't call it a rule. He said it like advice, casual, almost an afterthought, except he wasn't looking at me. He was staring at a stretch of bare ground southeast of the tower, about 300 yards down a gentle slope, a burn scar. 6 acres of mineral soil left by a lightning fire in 2018 that never grew back. Some nights after midnight, he said, you might see something down there. In the burn scar, something that looks like a tree, a big one. I waited for the punchline. If that happens, don't look at it directly. Don't use the binoculars. Just face the north windows and wait it out. A tree, I said. It won't be there during the day. You'll want to check. Go ahead. But at night, you leave it alone. I asked him what it was. He said he didn't know. I asked how long it had been happening. He said longer than him. I told him if this was a hazing thing, a tradition for the new guy, it was a good one. He almost had me. And he turned and looked at me with something on his face I'd never seen before. Not fear. Something load-bearing, like he'd been holding it for a long time, and the weight had settled into bone. Kev, just follow the rule. He left the next morning. I watched his truck disappear below the canopy, and then the quiet closed in the high-altitude kind, where the silence has texture and you can feel the absence of sound pressing against the windows. I told myself he was messing with me. Night 3 took that apart. I was running a routine 360-degree scan at 12:15 a.m. Standard procedure. Slow sweep with binoculars, checking for smoke or lightning glow on the horizon. North was clear. West was clear. I rotated past southwest and hit at southeast, and my hands stopped moving before my brain caught up. The burn scar was not empty. There was a tree in it. Not a tree that belonged there. A tree the size of a building, 70 or 80 feet tall, with a trunk wider than anything in the surrounding old growth. It was black, not shadowed, not dark green. Black the way a hole in the ground is black. The way the space behind a closed door is black when you're a child and you know something is standing on the other side. Its branches extended in long, uneven arms, and they were moving, rotating, slow, deliberate arcs, like the hands of several clocks running at different speeds. There was no wind. The stillness on my face confirmed it. Nothing else in the canopy moved. Just the tree, centered in that dead clearing like it had always been there, and the forest had simply been pretending otherwise. I put the binoculars down. I didn't decide to. My arms dropped the way your hand jerks off a burner. Something in my body identified the danger before I had language for it. I faced north, sat on the cot, put my headphones in and played music loud enough to feel in my teeth, and I did not look south again until the sky turned gray. At 6:40, I hiked down to the burn scar. Bare mineral soil, dry, cool under my palm. Not a stem, not a root, not a shadow. I stood in the exact center of the clearing where the trunk had been and looked up at the empty sky and tried to make myself feel foolish. I couldn't, because here's what I didn't tell Oren. When I first saw the tree in the half second before my hands dropped the binoculars, there was a pulse of something that wasn't fear. Something warm, brief, involuntary, like recognizing a face you haven't seen in years. My chest opened slightly. My grip loosened. For maybe a full second, I wasn't scared. I was glad to see it. The fear came after, but the gladness came first. Night 5, it came back. Same time. Eastern edge of the burn scar, now 50 yards closer. Same black trunk, same rotating branches, but the surface of the bark looked different through my peripheral vision. Textured, almost layered like compressed pages. I turned away faster, but I noticed something on the way to the cot. My feet had been pointed south when I stood up from the chair. I'd been facing the right direction before I knew it was there. I started checking during the day, every day. Not the careful grid walk I'd done the first time, sloppier, more compulsive. I'd catch myself halfway down the slope at odd hours, scanning the burn scar with my bare eyes, confirming emptiness. By day 10, I was doing it 3 times between sunrise and noon. By day 12, I was standing at the south-facing window during radio check-ins with dispatch, giving my weather readings while staring at the clearing, not remembering when I'd walked over there. I called Oren on day 9, keyed up the radio, used his call sign, didn't mention the tree, didn't mention the rule, just talked weather, food, a coyote on the ridge. He sounded normal. He asked how I was sleeping. I said fine, which was a lie. I'd been waking up at 12:25 every night, 5 or 6 minutes before the tree appeared, already sitting upright, already oriented south. My body had learned the schedule before my mind agreed to it. Then came day 14 and the logbook, and the part where rationalizing stopped being possible. I was swapping the fire extinguisher cartridge, routine maintenance. The mounting bracket was warped with age, and when I wrestled the canister out of the clip, I heard something shift behind the metal. A composition notebook, black and white marbled cover, held in place with 3 strips of duct tape that had gone yellow and brittle. I sat on the floor of the cab and opened it, and my life divided into before and after. 9 entries, 9 people, 9 different handwritings. The first was dated 6 years ago. The most recent was from last summer. Some were careful and analytical. One was clinical, almost detached, like a field report. One was raw and scared, full of crossed-out lines and restarted sentences. Different voices, different temperaments. They all described the same thing. A tree and a burn scar. After midnight. Black. Moving. Closer each time. 2 entries mentioned a sound that started around day 25. One called it humming. One called it a voice. Both said it came from the direction of the tree, and both said it sounded familiar. Personal. Something they recognized but couldn't source. The 8th entry was the most detailed. The woman who wrote it had a background in biology, Latin nomenclature, trunk diameter estimates, GPS coordinates for each appearance. 29 days of meticulous observations. Her final entry read, "Tonight I am going to approach to within 50 meters for a visual survey. I believe this is a bioluminescent phenomenon, and I intend to document it for the district ecologist." After that, a blank page, then another blank page, then the 9th entry in a completely different hand. 11 words. Steady handwriting at the start, shaking by the end. "I'm going to walk down there tonight because I think I finally..." The sentence didn't finish. The pen trailed off the final word in a thin, straight line that ran to the edge of the page, like the hand kept moving after the person behind it stopped. I went through every entry and counted the days. The longest anyone lasted was 31. The shortest was 28. Most ended around 30. I sat there for a long time. Fire extinguisher on its side. Afternoon sun through the west windows falling across the open notebook. I could see where individual writers had pressed hard enough to leave grooves in the pages beneath theirs. 9 people had sat in this room. 9 people had looked at this burn scar. 9 people had written in this book and then walked into the dark and never come back. I counted backward from 14. 17 days. And my body had already learned the schedule. I should have left that day. I know that, you know that. But leaving would have meant believing that Orrin, the person who sat on my kitchen floor, who handed me this job like a lifeline, had knowingly sent me somewhere that 9 people vanished from. And I was not ready to believe that about him. So I did what I always do when the truth threatens to reshape someone I love. I looked for a way to make it smaller. I started with the names in the logbook. First names only: Tyler, Amanda, Jake, and 6 others. I pulled the official station records from the filing cabinet under the firefinder. Seasonal assignment logs going back 8 years. Cross-referenced. The first 3 matched. Tyler Rowan, 2019. Amanda Choi, 2020. Jake Peterson, 2020. A mid-season replacement, which should have told me something by itself. The official records listed all of them as normal terminations. End of contract? Did not renew? Personal reasons? Clean language. The kind that exists to prevent follow-up. I searched their full names on my phone cell service on the ridge was unreliable, but I could get a weak signal if I stood on the catwalk's northeast corner, which is where I stayed for most of that afternoon, scrolling with one hand and gripping the railing with the other. Tyler Rowan had no online presence after August 2019. Amanda Choi's LinkedIn was frozen in 2020. Jake Peterson's Facebook was technically active, but every post after September of that year had the same quality. Flat, generic, automated. Birthday wishes and shared links. The kind of account that could run without a person behind it. 9 names. 9 clean terminations. 9 people who went digitally silent within weeks of leaving this tower. I was writing the list on the back of a weather form when I noticed my left hand was gripping the pen hard enough to bend the clip. I set it down and opened and closed my fingers a few times. They felt stiff, rehearsed, like they'd been holding something that wasn't a pen. The entry that stayed with me was the biologist's. Entry 8. She'd been meticulous: dates, measurements, GPS coordinates, species speculation. She wrote like someone building a case, someone who planned to bring evidence back. Her final note was a field protocol. Approach to 50 meters. Document. Report. She had a system. She was going to solve it, and then she walked into the dark. And the next person to open this book didn't even mention her. I wondered briefly why she hadn't taken the logbook with her as evidence. Then I remembered how I'd felt, holding it the grooves of 9 hands, pressed into the pages, the weight of it, the way it seemed to belong to the tower, the way the firefinder belonged to the tower. Taking it would have felt like removing a load-bearing wall. I understood that instinct. I didn't like understanding it. I spent 3 days sitting with all of this, going through the motions, morning weather, noon radio check, afternoon scan, evening log. The routines felt thin, transparent, like wearing a costume of a person who still believed this was a normal job. Twice I caught myself filing reports while standing at the south-facing window staring at the empty burn scar, unable to remember when I'd walked over there. Day 17. I called Orrin. I didn't plan it as a confrontation. I keyed up the radio and used his call sign. Rimrock, this is Burnt Ridge. And when he answered, I heard the familiar click and squelch, and his voice, compressed by the radio but still unmistakably him. And for a second I almost lost my nerve. His voice still sounded like safety. Hey Kev, what's up? I found the notebook. Silence. Not radio silence, I could hear the carrier wave, the faint hiss of his open channel. He was still keyed up, just not talking. Behind the fire extinguisher, I said 9 names. A slow exhale that crackled through the speaker. Yeah, he said, I figured you would. You figured I would? I should have told you before you came up, I know that. Orrin, 9 people. I know. What happened to them? Another long pause. When he came back, his voice was lower. Careful. The first year I was here, the guy at Burnt Ridge, Tyler, he lasted 26 days. I didn't know him well. He was quiet. One morning I called on the radio and he didn't answer. I hiked over and the tower was empty. Gear still there, pack still there. His boots were by the cot. The door was open and the stairs were down and there were footprints in the gravel heading southeast, toward the burn scar. They didn't come back. I didn't say anything. I reported it. District sent a search team, dogs, helicopter, 4 days. Nothing. They classified it as a voluntary walkaway. He paused. Without his boots. And then it happened again. Amanda, next summer, day 29, same thing. Gear in the tower, footprints toward the scar, gone, then Jake, mid-season replacement, then 2 more. I've been here for 5 of them, Kev, and you kept staffing the tower. I tried to stop it. After Amanda, I told the district ranger. Told him about the footprints, the boots, the pattern. He listened. He was polite. And then he told me Burnt Ridge had been staffed continuously since 1968, and that seasonal turnover was normal, and that if I was struggling with isolation, there were mental health resources through the Employee Assistance Program. I almost laughed. After Jake, I stopped reporting. I just managed it, made sure the book was there, checked in on whoever was assigned, tried to keep them past 31, and nobody made it. The longest was 31 days exactly. Most hit 30. If you can get past 31, I think it resets, moves on, but nobody's tested it. I asked him the question I'd been holding since I opened the logbook. My fingers were wrapped around the radio so hard my knuckles ached. And you recommended me. The carrier wave hissed. The alternative was a stranger, he said, someone with nobody checking on them. Nobody on the radio every night who gave a damn whether they answered. His voice caught just a hitch in the transmission. I thought if it was someone I knew, someone I could talk to every night, someone strong, that might be enough to break 31. The thing I can't explain, the thing that makes everything that happened after my fault, at least partly, is that I understood him. I understood the math. I understood looking at an impossible situation and deciding that love was a variable that might change the equation. I'd done the same calculation during my marriage over and over, and I'd been wrong every time. But the impulse was something I recognized in my own chest. "You should have told me," I said. "You should have told me and let me choose." "I know, I'm sorry." I let the channel sit open. The hiss filled the cab. Outside, late afternoon light was turning the canopy gold, and the burn scar was just a bald patch on the hillside. "Ordinary? What does it want?" I asked. "I don't know. The entries, some of them talk about understanding something, about finally getting it. What does that mean?" "I don't know, Kev. I've never looked at it. 3 years, and I've never been at Burnt Ridge after dark. I hike over in the morning when someone goes quiet, never at night." His voice hardened on that last word, reinforced. The sound of a wall being rebuilt. I signed off. The sun went down. I sat in the cab and watched the light leave the burn scar and tried to decide what to do. Here's what I did. I stayed. I followed the rule. I faced north when the tree appeared and waited for dawn, partly because I was gathering information, partly because I still had 13 days before the window closed, but mostly because Orrin called at 10 p.m. that night, same as every night, and told me a bad joke about a bear and said goodnight, and his voice still sounded like the voice of the person who saved me, and leaving felt like confirming that every act of kindness he'd ever shown me was contaminated. I wasn't ready for that confirmation. Day 20. The tree appeared at 12:31. I didn't look directly, but in my peripheral vision I could see it had cleared the burn scar entirely. It was standing in the gravel apron at the base of the tower, the maintained area where I kept the water cache and the tool locker, maybe 80 yards from the foot of the stairs, close enough that I could hear the branches of a slow creak, rhythmic like rigging on a ship in a calm harbor, and the bark. Even in peripheral vision, I could tell the surface had changed again. The layered, compressed texture I'd noticed on night 5 had deepened. It looked geological now, like sedimentary rock, like time had been stacked and pressed into a vertical column, and what I was seeing wasn't wood but a record of something. I turned north, sat on the cot, headphones in, but my hands were doing something, both of them resting on my knees, fingers tapping in a slow, complex pattern. Left index, right ring, left middle, right thumb. A sequence I'd never learned, never heard, never consciously initiated, over and over. I watched them do it for 90 seconds before I registered what I was seeing. I pressed my palms flat against my thighs and held them there. The muscles twitched against the fabric for almost a minute before they went still. Sitting there in the dark, hands pinned to my legs, I understood something the 9 entries had been trying to tell me in 9 different voices. The tree wasn't just something you saw, it was something that practiced you. Day 24 is when the sound started. I'd been expecting it. 2 logbook entries mentioned it beginning around day 25. I figured knowing it was coming would help, the way knowing a jump scare is loaded lets you brace. That's not how it works. Knowing it was coming made it worse, because I'd been listening for it. 4 nights in a row I'd sat on the cot, facing north with headphones in and strained to hear something underneath the music. Checking, scanning, and by the time it arrived, I'd trained my ears to find it. It wasn't humming. It was Orrin's voice. Not an imitation, not something that reminded me of him. His voice, the cadence, the rhythm, the way he drops the last word of a sentence slightly lower, the way he breathes in through his nose before saying something serious. I'd been hearing it on the radio every night for 3 weeks and in person for 7 years before that, and it was talking about the road trip. After my separation, last November, Orrin drove us east. No destination, just moving. We ended up in Redmond at a Motel 6 off the highway, drinking gas station coffee at 2 a.m. because neither of us could sleep. And I told him something. Not dramatic, Just a small, true, ugly thing about my marriage that I'd never said to another person. The kind of admission that only comes out in a motel room at 2 a.m. when you're too tired to protect yourself. He listened. He said one sentence back. Simple. It made me feel less alone than I'd felt in months. The voice from the tree was reproducing that conversation. Both sides. My confession, then Oren's response, then the silence that followed, then the sound of me setting my coffee cup on the nightstand. Not paraphrasing, reproducing, with the pauses in the right places, with the half laugh I'd done when I was trying not to cry, with the creak of the mattress when Oren shifted his weight. I was standing at the south window. I don't remember walking there. The headphones were around my neck, music still playing thinly against my collarbones. I was facing the tree. I caught myself, turned around, sat on the cot, headphones on, volume up until it hurt. But I need you to understand what that moment felt like, because the logbook entries couldn't convey it, and I don't think I can either, but I have to try. The voice didn't feel like an attack. It felt like being remembered. It felt like someone had taken the most important conversation of my worst year and preserved it, every breath, every detail, and was playing it back as proof that it mattered, that it had been heard, that it was still happening somewhere. The pull toward the window wasn't fear, it was gratitude. The same warmth I'd felt for a half second on night 3 when the gladness came before the dread. Except now it lasted longer. Now it had content. Now it knew my name and the name of every wound I carried. And it was speaking to each one individually in the only voice I'd ever trusted with them. I didn't sleep, not because of terror, because of the effort it took to stay on the cot. Every muscle oriented south. My fingers tapped the rhythm on my thighs, both hands. And I let them because stopping the tapping required concentration I needed for staying still. At dawn, I radioed Oren. Did you sleep last night? Yeah, why? The motel in Redmond in November. The thing I told you at 2 a.m. Have you ever repeated that to anyone? Long pause. What? How? Of course not. Why? Have you written it down? Email, text, anything? Kevin, what's going on? Just answer. No. That was between us. I believed him. I believe him now. Which means the tree accessed that memory through a channel I can't identify because the only two people in that motel room were me and Oren, and the conversation had never existed anywhere except inside our heads. I didn't tell him what I'd heard. I almost did. I had the words ready. But something stopped me. Not the rule about describing the tree, something I'd half noticed in the logbook. I went back through the entries that afternoon, read each one slowly, looking for the pattern. Every person who disappeared had told someone about the tree before they vanished. Not all of them told Oren. Some called a friend. One wrote a detailed email. The biologist drafted a preliminary report. But every single entry in the days before it ended documented an act of description, putting the tree into words, making it real in someone else's mind. And every single one disappeared within 72 hours of that act. The biologist had been the most thorough. Days of formal observation protocol. A drafted report to the district ecologist. She'd put the tree into scientific language, given it a framework, tried to make it legible to an institution. Gone 2 days later. The man with the shaky handwriting had called his mother. He wrote about it, called Mom. Tried to explain. She said I sounded tired. His entry ended the next night. I closed the book. Afternoon sun on the floorboards. A Steller's jay, screaming in the canopy outside the east window. Everything bright and ordinary. And I understood that telling Oren what I'd heard, it'd be the last thing I ever did on this mountain. So I didn't tell him. That night and every night after, Oren called at 10 p.m. and I talked about the weather and a hawk I'd been watching and I held a secret in my throat like a stone. The voice came back every night, but the content changed. It stopped replaying the Redmond conversation and started offering new material. Things Orrin had never said. Precise, targeted things. Night 25, it described the afternoon I found out about the divorce filing and told me what Orrin had wanted to say on the phone that day but couldn't find the words for. It sounded right. It sounded exactly like the sentence he would have said if he'd been braver. Night 26. You didn't ruin it, Kev. The marriage, you think you did, but you were just the one who stopped pretending first. Nobody has ever said that to me, not Orrin, not my therapist, not anyone. And hearing it in his voice, in the exact cadence he'd use it felt like something I'd been starving for had finally shown up, and all I had to do was open the window. Night 27. You're allowed to stop carrying it. You know that, right? You're allowed to just put it down. I didn't open the window. I pressed my hands flat on my legs and sat on the cot and focused on the tapping and waited for dawn. But each night the distance between hearing the voice and almost standing up got shorter. Each night the part of me that said this is the thing that took 9 people got quieter. And the part that said, what if it's not taking them? What if it's giving them something got louder? Day 28. I checked the logbook, not for information compulsively, the way you check your phone when you're anxious. I pulled it from behind the extinguisher and flipped through entries I'd already read 4 times, and stopped. There was a 10th entry, same book, same binding, same tape on the bracket. I hadn't removed it from the tower, hadn't left it anywhere unusual. It had been behind the extinguisher the entire time. The 10th entry was in my handwriting. I stared at it, my specific lowercase a with the longer tail, my way of crossing T's slightly to the right. The leftward slant I picked up from my mother, not similar, mine, dated 2 days from now. Day 31, last entry. I understand now. It wasn't taking them. They were going home. I read it 6 times, checked my watch, checked the previous dates, flipped between entry 9, the unfinished sentence, the trailing pen line, and entry 10, my handwriting, my words. For a day that hadn't happened yet, I put the book back, stood in the middle of the cab, pressed my hands against the sides of my head. Option 1, I wrote it during a sleep episode and don't remember. Possible. I'd been waking at 12:25 every night, already oriented south. Maybe the gaps were wider than I knew. Option 2, something else wrote it. Something with access to the tower, to my handwriting, to the dating convention I used in my weather logs. Option 3, the entry was real. A note from me on day 31, existing now because whatever lived in the burn scar didn't experience time the way I did. And on day 31, I was going to understand what the 9 people before me understood. And I was going to write those words voluntarily, and I was going to walk down the stairs and into the dark. And I was going to feel like I was going home. That night, the tree stood closer than ever. I could hear the branches without opening a window, that slow creak, the rigging sound, but louder now. And underneath it, something almost tonal, almost melodic. The bark, when I glimpsed it peripherally, had changed again. The geological layers had deepened into something that looked almost like grain, like pages, like the compressed cross-section of a very old book. The voice started immediately. You've been so tired, Kev. You've been tired for so long, you don't have to keep sitting there. I sat on the cot, hands flat, headphones at maximum. At 3 a.m., my hands took the headphones off. I didn't decide it. They acted the way they'd started tapping independently, fluently, like they'd practiced the motion while I slept. It's okay, you can look. Nothing bad happens when you look. I put them back on. At 3:40, my hands removed them again. I pressed my palms against my eyes so hard I saw static. I held them there until sunrise. My fingers tapped the rhythm against my own face the entire time. I could feel them doing it. I couldn't stop them. 7 hours. That's what day 28 cost me. 7 hours of fighting my own hands, while a perfect reproduction of the only voice I trusted explained gently and specifically why I should stop. 17 days ago, turning away had taken a second. Now it took 7 hours, 3 days left. The math was going in one direction. I decided to leave on day 29. No revelation, no breaking point. I woke up and looked at my hands tapping the cot. Frame in that rhythm, the one I never learned, and understood concretely that within 48 hours, I would walk down those stairs voluntarily and feel good about it. I radioed dispatch at 7:15. Resigned effective immediately. Personal emergency. The dispatcher, Linda, who I'd talked to twice a day for a month, asked if I needed medical. I said no. She asked if I could stay until a replacement was arranged. I said no. She was annoyed but not alarmed. Seasonal lookouts quit early all the time. She processed it in 2 minutes. Then I called Orrin. I'm leaving today. Surprised silence. The short kind. Today? Already called dispatch. I'm hiking out as soon as I pack. Kev, I'm past the point where talking helps. I know the schedule. I'm not going to be here on day 31. When he came back, his voice was careful. Okay, that's good. I think that's the right call. You think that's the right call? I've been thinking about whether I should just drive over there and get you. Why didn't you? Because the last 2 times I drove to Burnt Ridge to check on someone, the tower was already empty. His voice cracked on the word empty. Barely. Just enough for me to hear the fracture under the composure. And despite everything, the logbook, the 9 names, all of it, something clenched in my chest. The grief was real. Whatever else Orrin had done or failed to do, the grief was real. I'll call you from Bend tonight, I said. Kev? Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought it would be different with you. I know, Orrin. I packed in 10 minutes. Sleeping bag, clothes, water, phone, wallet. Left the instruments, the radio, the logbook. I thought about taking the book evidence, proof. But the idea of carrying those 9 voices down the mountain felt like a different kind of theft than the one the tree was committing. I didn't want my hands on it any longer than necessary. Down the stairs at 8:30. Bright sun. Burn scar empty. I crossed the gravel and hit the trail north and walked fast, waiting for something to stop me. A sound. A pull, the compulsion to turn around. The forest was just a forest. Fir and hemlock. A creek in the drainage. Boots on packed dirt. My hands hung at my sides, and they were still. I reached the trailhead in just over an hour. My car was dusty and pine-needled and completely ordinary. I drove to the highway, and by noon I was in my apartment in Bend, with the door locked and the windows closed. I slept 6 hours, hard, dreamless, the best sleep in a month. When I woke up, the apartment was quiet, and my hands were still, and I felt, for the first time since night 3, like I owned my body. I'd made it. I was out. 47 miles from Burnt Ridge, past the schedule, past the window. None of the 9 had done what I'd done. They'd all stayed, all walked toward it. I had walked away. I called Orrin that evening, cell phone, not the radio. He picked up on the 4th ring. I'm home, I said. Good, that's really good, Kev. Genuine relief. The knot in my chest loosened. How do you feel? Tired, better? We talked for almost an hour. Normal things, a bear at Rimrock, the dust on my windshield, football, a new restaurant in Bend. It was the easiest conversation we'd had in weeks. And I sank into it the way you sink into a warm bath gratefully, without thinking. The relief of putting something heavy down. 45 minutes in, Orrin said something that didn't belong to him. We were talking about the drive down. I was describing the forest road, the dust hanging in the air behind my car, and he said, "You've been so tired, Kev. You've been tired for so long." My hand tightened on the phone. "What did you say?" "I said you've been tired. You sound exhausted, which makes sense. Say that again. The exact words." "Kevin, the exact words." "You've been tired? I don't understand what..." "That phrase. You've been so tired. You've been tired for so long." "Where did that come from?" It's what I was thinking. You sound tired. What's wrong?" He didn't know. I could hear it. He had no idea he'd just said word for word the same sentence the tree had said through the tower wall on night 28. I tested him. Gave him the first 3 words of another sentence the voice had used. "It's okay, you can rest now," he finished without hesitating. "Right? That's what people say. Kev, you're scaring me." "People don't say that, Oren. The tree said that in your voice. Those exact words." Silence, the long kind. I could hear him breathing. "I don't know what you're telling me." "I'm telling you the tree used your voice, specific sentences, and you just produced 2 of them in normal conversation without knowing where they came from." "That's Kevin, I'm just talking." People say similar, "You've been so tired, Kev. You've been tired for so long." I said it flat, exactly as the tree had delivered it. "It's okay, you can rest now. Nothing bad happens when you look." "I didn't say that last one." "No, but you would have. Given another 30 seconds, you would have said it and not known why." I heard him swallow. The line was quiet enough that I caught the click of his throat. "I don't know what's happening," he said, very softly. I believed him. That's what I keep coming back to, not the tree, not the logbook, not the 10th entry. I believed him. Oren had no idea that the sentences coming out of his mouth had been seeded by something in a burn scar 47 miles away. He was talking to his friend. He was saying what felt natural. I got off the phone, sat in the apartment for a long time. Streetlights came on. A neighbor's dog barked twice and stopped. Ordinary sounds. The tree doesn't take people by calling them into the forest. It takes them by saturating the people they trust. Every person Oren recommended for that tower, he'd cared about them. That was the criterion. Not vulnerability, not isolation. Care. Oren had to genuinely care about the person he sent because the tree operated through the channel that caring creates. Through trust. Through the voice you don't question because it belongs to someone who has never hurt you. Through late-night radio calls and stupid jokes and the quiet constancy of someone showing up. Oren wasn't possessed, wasn't infected, wasn't a puppet. He was just the medium. The way copper carries electricity unchanged by what moves through it, unaware of it. The tree had been delivering itself through the one channel I would never think to question, and Oren had been helping for 3 years without knowing. Every expression of loyalty, every act of friendship, every moment where his presence made me feel safe enough to stay one more night. The tree was in all of it, and Oren was in all of it, and I can't separate them because they used the same voice, and they both meant it. I slept with the window shut and the lights on. Woke once at 12:25, sitting upright. Hands in my lap, tapping. I pressed them flat and waited. 6 days ago, Oren called. He sounded good, happy. The bear was relocated. Weather clearing up. Then, casually the way you'd mention any good news, he said he was recommending someone new for the Burnt Ridge posting. A friend from his climbing group. Guy named Marcus, going through a bad divorce. Could use a reset. He's a good guy, Oren said. Solid. The quiet would be good for him. The cold started in my stomach. Same cold as the 10th logbook entry. It radiated outward into my arms, my fingers, the hand holding the phone. I opened my mouth to warn him to say, You can't. You know what happens? I lived through it, and you cannot do this to someone else. What came out was, that sounds great. He'll love it up there. The words left my mouth and my voice, with my cadence, with a warmth that felt completely authentic. And I meant it. In the moment I said it, I meant it the way you mean it when you recommend a restaurant you loved, when you tell a friend about a place that changed your life. Normal goodbye. The line went dead. I sat in my kitchen and stared at my hand on the counter. Fingers tapping, left index, right ring, left middle, right thumb, patient, practiced. The hands of several clocks running at different speeds. I pressed them flat. The muscles twitched for 30 seconds. A minute. Went still. I picked up my phone to call Oren back. To take it back. To say I didn't mean it. Don't send Marcus. I looked at the call log and scrolled through it 3 times. His name was there 6 days ago, 12 minutes. But when I tried to recall the conversation, the shape was there and the content was dissolving. Like a dream where you remember the feeling but the words are gone. I remember, that sounds great. I remember meaning it. I don't remember deciding to say it. Marcus starts June 9th. 22 days from now, a man I've never met will climb those stairs and look out at an empty burned scar. And Oren will drive away believing he's done a good thing for a friend. Because that's what Oren believes every time. Because that's the only thing the tree needs him to believe. It's 11:47 p.m. Windows closed. Apartment quiet. My hands have been still for almost 20 minutes, which is the longest stretch in 3 days. I'm going to call Oren tomorrow. I'm going to try to say the right thing. Don't send Marcus. Close the posting. Walk away. But I'm sitting here in my kitchen in the dark, and I can feel it. Not the tree, not a voice, something smaller, a readiness in my throat, a willingness waiting to shape itself into warm, encouraging, trustworthy words that will send the next person up the mountain. I am 47 miles from Burnt Ridge. I am 9 days past the tower. I am the only person in the history of that posting who left early, and my hands are starting again. Left index, right ring, left middle, right thumb. I don't know who's tapping. Whose?